about the threat of a nuclear-armed Iran. Sarkozy stunned his countrymen when he told an annual conference of French ambassadors on August 27, 2007, that Iran faced a stark choice between shutting down its nuclear program or tougher international sanctions and ultimately war. This approach is the only one that allows us to escape from a catastrophic alternative, an Iranian bomb or the bombing of Iran, Sarkozy said. 3 weeks later, Foreign Minister Bernard Kouchner warned in a televised interview that the world's major powers needed to toughen sanctions on Iran to prevent Tehran from getting the bomb and to prevent war. We must prepare for the worst, Kouchner said. The worst, sir, is war. Those comments were prompted by reports that were given to the French president about Iran's nuclear weapons program derived from debriefings of the defector General Asghari, a newspaper of a source of ours, intelligence sources learned in Europe. Asghari is the highest-level Iranian official to have defected to the West since the Islamic Revolution of 1979. His defection set off a panic in Tehran. As a senior member of the General Staff of the Revolutionary Guards Corps, Asghari had access to highly classified intelligence information as well as strategic planning documents, as I reported at the time. A damage assessment then underway in Tehran was expected to take months to complete. So extensive was Asghari's access to Iran's nuclear intelligence secrets. Asghari had detailed knowledge of Iranian Revolutionary Guards units operating in Iraq and Lebanon because he had trained some of them. He also knew some of the secrets of Iran's nuclear weapons program because he had been a top procurement officer and a deputy minister of defense in charge of logistics. But Asghari, as opposed to Ashghari, never had responsibility for nuclear weapons development and probably did not have access to information about the status of the secret programs being run by the Revolutionary Guards, Iranian sources tell the paper. In an effort to cover up the failure of the Iranian counterintelligence to prevent Asghari's defection, a Persian-language website run by the former Revolutionary Guards Commander General Mohsen Rezi, spelled M-O-H-S-E-N, last name R-E-Z-A-I, claimed in March that Asghari was on a CIA hit list of 20 former Revolutionary Guards officers and had been assassinated. I guess he's dead then. I don't know who we're talking to. The Senate Intelligence Committee will be debriefed today on the NIE and the House Committee on Wednesday. But already the declassified summary has Republicans grumbling on Capitol Hill. We want to know why we should believe this, one congressional Republican told this paper. This is such a departure from the past, and there are so many unanswered questions. While the intelligence community is supposed to report just the facts and its assessment of those facts and their reliability to policymakers, this NIE clearly advocates policy positions. Our assessment that the program probably has halted primarily in response to the international pressure suggests Iran may be more vulnerable to influence on the issue that we judged previously, the NIC wrote in the declassified key judgments of the NIE. The NIE opined that the new assessment leads to the policy conclusion that the United States should offer some combination of threats of intensified international scrutiny and pressure along with opportunities in order to lock in Iranian good behavior. This carrot and stick approach has been the State Department's preferred policy for the past 27 years and has only strengthened the resolve of Iran's leaders to continue defying the United States. Those countries that assume that the decaying methods such as psychological war, political propaganda, and the so-called economic sanctions would work and prevent Iran's fast drive toward progress are mistaken, Ahmadinejad said in Tehran in September at a military parade. By progress, Ahmadinejad is referring to Iran's recently declared success at enriching uranium. Democrats in the House and Senate Intelligence Committee have been running around with big smiles on their faces, a Republican source told this paper. Republicans on the committee intend to ask for more information on the sourcing of this latest NIE during closed-door briefings today and tomorrow. There can possibly be more. No more. Report: UK spy chiefs believe Iran's deceived CIA over nuclear program. The UK-based Sunday Telegraph reported that British spy chiefs have serious doubts that Iran has shelved its nuclear weapons program, and a U.S. intelligence report claimed last week, and believe the CIA has been deceived by Tehran. According to the report, the timing of the CIA report has also provoked fury in the British government, where officials believe it has undermined the efforts to impose tough new sanctions on Iran and made an Israeli attack on its nuclear facilities more likely. The security service in London want concrete evidence to allay concerns that the Islamic State has fed disinformation to the CIA, the Sunday Telegraph said. The U.S. intelligence report, according to the British newspaper, used human sources, wireless intercepts, and evidence from an Iranian defector to conclude that Iran suspended the military aspect of its nuclear program in 2003. However, the Sunday Telegraph added that British intelligence is concerned that U.S. spy chiefs were so determined to avoid giving President Bush a reason to go to war as the reports on Saddam Hussein's weapons program did in Iraq. The newspaper quoted a senior UK official as saying that British spies shared the concerns of Israeli defense chiefs that Iran was still pursuing nuclear weapons. military action last resort. According to him, British analysts believe that Iranian nuclear staff, knowing their phones were tapped, deliberately gave misinformation. We are skeptical. We want to know what the basis of it is. Where did it come from? Was it on the basis of the defector? Was it on the basis of the intercepted material? They say things on the phone because they know we are up on the phones. They say black is white. They will say anything to throw us off, the Sunday Telegraph quoted the British official as saying. It's not as if American intelligence agencies were regarded as brilliant in this region. According to the report, a U.S. intelligence source revealed that some American intelligence personnel share the concern of the British and the Israelis. Many middle-ranking CIA veterans believe Iran is still committed to producing nuclear weapons and are concerned that the agency lost a number of its best sources in Iran in 2004, the official was quoted by the Sunday Telegraph as saying. Sneh, until recently Israel's Deputy Minister of Defense, told the Sunday Telegraph that military action would be the only option if the world's community did not impose tough sanctions on Iran. No one can rule out the high confidence that somewhere in Iran, 70 times the size of Israel, there is one lab working on the weapons program, Sneh told the UK newspaper. Military action is not a desired option, it is the last resort. That's why sanctions are so important. We have to urge the international community to be serious about sanctions and to take necessary measures to defend the civilian population. But thanks to the NIE, I guess that's just not going to happen, is it? Thank you. Furthermore, The Flaws in the Iran Report by John R. Bolton. Yes, that John R. Bolton. The neocons get freaking. Thursday, December 6, 2007, page 829. Or 829. I want this work. Here we are. Rarely has a document from the supposedly hidden world of intelligence had such impact as the National Intelligence Estimate released this week. Rarely has an administration been so unprepared for such an event, and rarely have vehement critics of the intelligence community on issues as Iraq's weapons of mass destruction reversed themselves so quickly. All this shows that we not only have a problem interpreting what the mullahs in Tehran are up to, but also a more fundamental problem. Too much of the intelligence community is engaging in policy formulation rather than intelligence analysis, and too many in Congress and the media are happy about it. Gee, this sounds like the same thing that the media accused Feith and Rumsfeld of doing. Turns out it's not them. Turns out it is the State Department who's doing it. And look, there's Colin Powell's dirty fingers in the State Department. Again. No kidding. President Bush may not be able to repair his Iran policy, which was not rigorous enough to begin with in his last year, but he would leave a lasting legacy by returning the intelligence world to its proper function. Consider these flaws in the NIE's key judgments, which were made public even though approximately 140 pages of analysis and reams of underlying intelligence remain classified. First, the headline finding that Iran halted its nuclear weapons program in 2003 is written in a way that guarantees the totality of the conclusions will be misread. In fact, there is little substantive difference between the conclusions of the 2005 NIE on Iran's nuclear capabilities and the 2007 NIE. Moreover, the distinction between military and civilian programs is highly artificial, since the enrichment of uranium, which all agree Iran is continuing, is critical to civilian and military uses. Indeed, it has always been Iran's civilian program that posed the main risk of a nuclear breakout. The real difference between the NIEs are not in the hard data, but in the psychological assessment of the mullah's motives and objectives. The current NIE freely admits to having only moderate confidence that the suspension continues, and says that there are significant gaps in our intelligence and that our analysts dissent from their initial judgment on suspicion. This alone should give us considerable pause. Second, the NIE is internally contradictory and insufficiently supported. It implies that Iran is susceptible to diplomatic persuasion and pressure, yet the only event in 2003 that might have affected Iran was our invasion of Iraq and the overthrow of Saddam Hussein. Not exactly a diplomatic pas de deux. As Undersecretary of State for Arms Control in 2003, I know we were nowhere near exerting any significant diplomatic pressure on Iran. Nowhere does the NIE explain its logic on this critical point. Moreover, the risks and returns of pursuing a diplomatic strategy are policy calculations, not intelligence judgments. The very public rollout in the NIE of a diplomatic strategy exposes the biases at work behind the Potemkin village of intelligence. Third, the risks of disinformation by Iran are real. We have lost many fruitful sources inside Iraq in recent years because of increased security and intelligence tradecraft by Iran. The sudden appearance of new sources should be taken with more than a little skepticism. In a background briefing, intelligence officials said they had concluded it was possible, but not likely, that the new information they were relying on was deception. These are hardly hard scientific conclusions. One contrary opinion came from Of all places, an unnamed International Atomic Energy Agency official quoted in the New York Times saying, "We are more skeptical. We don't buy the American analysis 100%. We are not that generous with Iran." When the IAEA is tougher than our analysis, you can bet the farm that someone is pursuing a policy agenda. Fourth, the NIE suffers from a common problem in government: the over-evaluation of the most recent pieces of data. In the bureaucracy, where access to information is a source of rank and prestige, ramming home policy changes with the latest hot tidbit is commonplace and very deleterious. It is a rare piece of intelligence that is so important it can conclusively or even significantly alter the body of already known information. Yet the bias towards the new appears to have exerted a disproportionate effect on intelligence analysis. Fifth, many involved in the drafting and approving the NAE were not intelligence professionals, but refugees from the State Department. Thank you, Colin Powell and Richard Armitage. Again! How much damage can one person do? Jesus. Brought into the new, or two people in this case, brought into the new central, yes, the State Department under Colin Powell. Holy God! Brought into the new central bureaucracy, the Director of National Intelligence. These officials had relatively benign views of Iran's nuclear intentions 5 and 6 years ago. Now they are writing those views as if they were received wisdom from on high. In fact, these are precisely the policy biases they had before, recycled as intelligence judgments. That such a flawed product could emerge from a drawn-out bureaucratic struggle is extremely troubling. While the President and others argue that we need to maintain pressure on Iran, this, quote, intelligence, end quote, torpedo, has all but sunk those efforts, inadequate as they were. Ironically, the NIE opens the way for Iran to achieve its military nuclear ambitions in an essentially unmolested fashion, to the detriment of us all. John R. Bolton, the former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, is the author of Surrender is Not an Option, Defending America and the United Nations and Abroad. He is the senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute.
Now, I want to make my beliefs clear. I do not wish for Iran to obtain a nuclear weapon.
Really? You don't wish for Iran to obtain a nuclear weapon? However, this is your position. One, let me guess, this is the Ron Paul crowd position. It's very confusing, so let me try to walk you through this. One, they're not building a nuclear weapon. Two, if they were to build a nuclear weapon, as Paul said, we've been bombing them, and so that they should be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. Now, which is it? Because none of them are any good, actually.
But I feel that the proper policy, in order to promote peace...
I don't care what you think the proper policy is. I'm sick and tired of you as a veteran getting all the attention and claiming that we speak for the rest of the veterans. The American people are out there, and they think that most veterans agree with you, because the rest of the silent majority are that, silent.
Is diplomacy and free trade.
Diplomacy and free trade with Iran.
Where exactly should we hold these diplomatic initiatives? At the very competent UN?
The United States got a grilling last week at the UN Human Rights Council, where its unmatched accomplishments went on trial before a jury of peers. You see, in the upside-down world of the UN, countries like China, Pakistan, and Saudi Arabia are recognized as defenders of human rights, holding coveted seats on the council. President Bush refused to join this farce, but the Obama gang naturally jumped right on board. So on Friday, our nation faces periodic universal review, where UN officials, enemy states, and left-wing activists offer a public indictment of America. Among the violations they've outlined: covert CIA operations, cops with tasers, America's federalist system, the decades-long economic embargo of Cuba, gun control laws, or, as in the lack thereof, the continuing imprisonment of confessed cop killer Wesley Cook, and of course that hardy perennial, the infamous detention facility at Guantanamo Bay. In particular, Iran, Cuba, and Venezuela joined together to bash Washington for its alleged abuses. An amusing case of the inmates in charge of the asylum. Not so funny is the fact that the Obama administration is taking their indictments quite seriously. One top State Department official responded, "While we are proud of our achievements, we are not satisfied with the status quo." What? Free Wesley Cook? Close Gitmo? Strip the cops of non-lethal weapons? Is that what the department is saying? To be sure, loose words come easy to Obama and company. Remember when an administration official apologized to China for Arizona's troubling immigration law? But there is nothing to be gained from civil discourse with the likes of Tehran, Beijing, and Caracas. It's past time to quit the UN Human Rights Council.
Hi, my name is Ami Horowitz, and I'm here at the UN in Geneva, finishing up shooting on my feature film, You and Me, coming out later this year. We're here with the UN Conference on Racism and Tolerance, and we're doing a video blog for townhall.com covering our exploits. Check it out, enjoy it, we'll see you later.
It's
the first day of the UN's Human Rights Anti-Racism Conference, and Iran's president just finished giving the opening keynote speech. I figured maybe we in America could learn a thing or two on human rights from the Iranians, so I went to his hotel and met with one of his diplomats.
The Western government